Very good evening and a warm welcome to Dan Really Likes Wine, presented by Pick and Pay. And welcome, not for the first time, to Royal Johannesburg and Kensington. It's been a busy day with the Dan Nicholl Show Invitational, presented by BrightRock. The golf course is the image behind. It's not actually the golf course, it's a rather nice picture of the golf course, but in fact, it looks even nicer outside. It's been a splendid day, and right now about 170 golfers having a glass of wine or a cold beer before prize giving, and an auction where we'll be raising some money for the Laureus Sport for Good Foundation, which leads me to some other auction news. Put this date in your diary: Thursday, the 2nd of December at Strauss Auctions up in Johannesburg. We're going to be hosting the first Dan Really Likes Wine Christmas auction, and that is in support of the Reach for a Dream Foundation. We'll be auctioning off assorted lots of wine, big bottles, vintages, occasional case, and celebrating the end of the year for a very, very good cause. So put that one into the diary. Tonight, though, if you're with us, we've got something just as exciting, because it has been a busy time for Wine Magazine. I was talking to both Christian Eedes and Jacqueline Load from Wine Magazine last week at two different events about the magazine, the year, the world of wine, and in particular, something they have just done. I think it's for the very first time, where they've collated all of their best ofs, the different reports they have, the competition winners, and have given us what is for Wine Magazine the list of the best wines, wineries of the year, and a whole pile of different categories. And so we are joined by a blur of winemakers today. We have our guests from Morgenzon, Cavalli are with us. We've got Moreson joining us. We've got, and this is where I go blank. Well, let's bring everybody in, just so I can remember the extent of guests we have. And we also have a rather well-known wine writer and wine judge who's joining us, and that would be Mr. Christian Eedes. So Christian and Clayton and Alastair and Craig, guys, a very warm welcome, and lovely to have you with us. Thank you for joining us. Let's kick off with you there, Christian. Give us, if you will, just a sketch of what we're celebrating, why we're celebrating, and how it all works.
Thanks, Dan. Wine Mag convenes various reports throughout the year, sponsored by a financial services company, Prescient, and they're category specific. And then this past Friday, we, as you said, it was a bit of a year-end roundup, and we announced the best in category, which makes for a top 20.
And it is a top 20 that has seen some celebration in Cape Town. It's also seen some extensive celebration at Vergelegen in particular. Like, I don't think anybody's been to work since Friday. They've just been drinking out the barrel and dancing through the cellar and celebrating, because that was a big one, Andre. I'm going to come back to you in a second, Christian, to get some context. But what did it feel like, Andre van Rensburg, when that name came out and suddenly, there you go, Vergelegen Winery of the Year?
I think it's still a bit of a cloud9 situation for me. Obviously, immense joy at Vergelegen. We haven't entered a lot of competitions in the last 10 years or so, and we started last year entering Christian's different classes, and we did well, and we entered again this year, and we hope for the best. And when it was announced that we overall best seller of the year, I mean, it was as good as it can get. It was absolutely great. It was better than winning Veritas, which I've done in the past. It was better than winning the Prescient Trophy in London, and it was just enormous for me. It was really, really, really good.
One of the comments I picked up on social media after you won the award, Andre, was that it was great to see Vergelegen kind of back where they belong after being a little quiet over the last while. Do you feel that that's an accurate statement? And what do you think accounts for, I guess, a bit of a resurgence in the Vergelegen brand?
Well, firstly, it's a fair reflection that we're back. We have been absent, partly not to entering competitions, and you can't really win if you don't really enter. And maybe we are very traditional producer. We don't use the current kind of flavor of a month varieties like Chenin and Cinsault and all those strange things. We're very traditional. It's Bordeaux stuff. It's Cabernets and Merlots and Sauvios and Semillons and the blends of it. So yes, it is true we have been away, but before I leave this place, I have to make sure that Vergelegen takes up a top spot again, that we're back where we should be.
Oh, there's a great deal of pride in Vergelegen, and rightly so. I know my good friend Mark Ratcliffe over in New York is particularly excited, big fan of Vergelegen's wine. Explain, Christian, what this means. What is Winery of the Year? How do you win it? What does this say about Vergelegen?
So the approach is pretty straightforward. We don't have any arcane algorithms working in the background. It's basically you need to do well across all the categories, and then if you're best in category, there's a weighting that'll see you gain further award towards calculating the Winery of the Year. We had intended to do this last year, and to some extent, or should I say, thanks to COVID, our efforts to do this last year were somewhat curtailed. We did actually do it, but on a much smaller scale, because we simply couldn't have a end of year event or a very grand end of year event. So the inaugural Winery of the Year was in fact Takara in 2020. So Vergelegen's following in fairly illustrious steps. And I'm super chuffed that that the Wine Mag panel is rewarding wineries that I think that I certainly regard as making some of the best wine around. And I think generally, public and other commentators would agree. It's an endorsement of our processes. It's an endorsement of what the wineries are doing and are aiming to do. And I suppose you could call both Takara and Vergelegen blue chip. And I think it's important that our new wave winemakers get a lot of media coverage, and rightfully so. But I think it's also important that our blue chip, class growth wineries, if you will, also get some attention.
I suspect that is a philosophy that Andre van Rensburg will very happily share. Let's jump over to another one of our winners. And this is actually a wine that we've had on the show and have been suitably impressed by, and clearly not the only ones, because it got the best overall white wine. It was the Philly Chenin Blanc from Cavalli. Craig, welcome back to the show. How much of a surprise, how much excitement when this one was awarded?
Sure, it was a really great achievement. When I produced the wine last year and we bottled it, I was really uneasy about the wine, and I can remember discussing it with a friend, thinking like, geez, have we done the right things here? Is the tasting good? And it was very awkward in the beginning, but when the 96 point came through, and I think it was March, everybody was so ecstatic about it. Like, it kind of reaffirmed all the hard work that we put into the cellar and into the vineyards, and we've been cautiously watching the reports throughout the year, really trying to see, are we standing a really good chance? But even still, even with that result, it was a fantastic achievement to get White Wine of the Year on Friday. I mean, it's a real testament to what Cavalli is producing and the terroir that's there. I mean, it's going to produce excellent wines for years to come, I hope.
There are a whole lot of attractions to Cavalli as a state. The horses headlining an experience. It's got a great restaurant. You've got a really multifaceted space, but the wine is the driving force, and this in turn becomes the headline for that section. What is it for you about this wine that makes it just quite so special?
I think, when I took over the position many years ago, the vineyards were in a really awkward stage, and it really took time for the vineyards to kind of come into their own and to producing the quality fruit that's coming off it now. And it's exciting for me to see that effort come to fruition. I mean, it's the wine embodies everything that I like to believe in my winemaking style and what I believe should be coming from Cavalli. I mean, it's got everything from the minerality to the fruitness to the luscious body. I mean, you couldn't have asked for a better wine. And I think that's what it was a challenging wine to make, but the end result is just amazing.
And Christian Eedes headlines a group of people who think exactly the same thing. White wine of the year, the Philly from Cavalli. Let's head over to the red one. And this is an interesting one because you mentioned in Morgenzon, you tend to think Chardonnay and Chenin Blanc as the two wines that really are the pick of the bunch. And yet it is for a red wine that we speak to Alastair Rimmer, not for the first time on the show. Alastair, warm welcome. Red wine success. What's going on at the Morgenzon?
Yeah, Dan, I think a lot of people obviously know us for the world-class Chenin and Chards that we produce, and we've been doing consistently over a number of years. And because of all the acclaim and the limelight that those two varieties have demanded, sometimes it's maybe been forgotten that we're a pretty astute producer of all wines. The terroir and the site here at the Morgenzon is a beautiful site, and it has some diversity to it. And our red wines maybe being a little bit more savory in profile, dare I say a little bit more European in profile than the typical warm upfront South African wines. Not unlike a comment that Andre made. We were making wines that are a little bit tighter in their structure and not always as showy. And that's where a platform like the Wine Mag Prescient reports allows some of these wines that are a little bit more blue chip, a little bit more classy, a little bit understated to shine through the quality of their panel and their evaluation process. And in 2017, we all know it was an amazing vintage. Stellenbosch is a Bordeaux style blend. It's classically structured, tight, and just a fantastic showing from a great property once again.
It is great to win awards, and this is a wine that has got many admirers. But is there an element of challenge? We had a conversation on the show a week or so ago talking about Burgundy and Himalonada and the specialization of a particular area. If you've got this amazing reputation for Chenin Blanc, but then an amazing reputation for Chardonnay, and then there's an amazing award-winning red, does it amplify the whole offering, or is there an element of losing a bit of focus? Just a devil's advocate question, I suppose.
I think that's a fair comment. I think it's something we have to be very careful of as a producer to keep that focus and keep where we're at. We don't produce a lot of this wine. The Maestro is a small, focused, unique bottling of what we can do in a vintage, and it's not produced every vintage. Owing to the coolness of our site, there's some years it just doesn't have the density and the gravitas to carry it. So it's a wine that's only bottled when we think it's good enough, and it expresses our site. Our focus will remain across Chenin and Chardonnay, and maybe Syrah to not a lesser extent, but to a smaller extent, because our terroir is suited to those two white varieties. But we've got a little corner of the property that is dedicated to our Bordeaux varieties, and we enjoy making them. They're exciting. At the end of the day, we love wine and we love the property, and that corner of the property produces great Bordeaux. So we'll always release this, but it'll always be a small niche. The focus of our production will remain those other varieties, as you mentioned.
Margie Brand saying maybe the classical music being played to the vineyards is part of the magic. There's actually been a slight change, Margie. It's no longer just the classical music. Alastair sings to the vines every morning. So I expect the wines just get even better. Christian, let's drop back to you quickly. Those two wines, their best white, best red. Give us the Christian Eedes rundown on why these two stood out.
I think the first point to make is that we taste blind, labels out of sight. So we're not simply rubber stamping conventional wisdom as to who's who in the zoo. So I think what the panel really liked about the filly is a sort of a clarity of fruit. There's a, as we know, old vine Shannon is a big deal, and then there's some absolutely fabulous wines. But Cavalli's plantings are relatively new, and goes to show the benefit of working with clean, healthy fruit. As for the red, I can't really add too much to what Alastair said. Revisiting it on Friday night, I think the striking thing about the wine is how tightly wound it is, and it's going to take a good few years to really start showing its shutting its stuff. It's a keeper. I'd certainly put it down for 2 or 3 years, if not 5 years.
That is the 2017 of the Maestro, just to clarify the vintage. So best red, best white. We've then got a whole range of awards over at Moreson, headlined by the bubbly. So let's go over to Clayton. Clayton, congratulations, first of all. Well done. Every winemaker tries to play down awards a little. We make the wine for the wine, but you're also only human, and you must get excited when you get not just recognition, but this sort of recognition in this sort of company.
Yes, that is. Firstly, Hassan, how are you?
Very well, thank you.
Cool. Yeah, man, it is amazing, and obviously just listening to what everyone has been saying up until this point, and obviously not trying to be repetitive, I have to admit that for us personally, entering the Wine Mag and the Wine Mag Prescient reports is like a Christmas for a child. We generally take an approach where we submit a wine that we feel is good enough to compete. And then half the time, you have a bit of a punt. But essentially for us, it's about submitting something that we know we're proud about and we know that we actually can deliver the goods. We have a punt, and then obviously when the results come out, it's like I said, it's like opening a Christmas present. Well, to me, it's like opening a Christmas present. And it's incredible to see. And I've always maintained, especially with the ownership of Moreson, that I'm a staunch supporter of the Wine Mag reports, just based on their I'm going to use the word very loosely, but not to say the others are, but just the unbiased nature towards how the wines are presented, how they tasted, how they judged, and how they resulted. So, yeah, we had a really, really good year this year. We got two best of category, and then we had a top 10 as well for the Chardonnay, which we were very happy about.
You also get the award for your bubbles in the 50th year of Cut Classique. So celebrations doubling up there. The 2015 that you have that's won this particular best bubbles for the Prescient report with Wine Magazine, what makes it stand out?
Just, you know what, setting the vineyard and everything aside, I think for me, the real cherry on the cake here is a discussion I actually had in 2014 with the owners of Moreson about creating a slightly more vintage prestige cuvee of a Miss Molly variant. And I think at the time it was kind of a back and forth discussion, slight argument about whether we should do it. Do we want to actually spend the money on something that's going to go down for 5 years? And I remember arguing to the point that, this is, to me, it was an important project. I'd already isolated a small parcel of vineyards that I knew could actually deliver the goods. And I kind of threw the dice. And so to me, to see the reward 5 years later, in hindsight, obviously it's very quick. But while I was kind of watching and maturing the wine, we were kind of opening up a bottle every kind of 6 months or so, making sure everything was still in line, pH was still in check. So for me, I think that's a very rewarding process with, setting out with the target 6, 7 years ago, producing the wine and then kind of having this kind of result. So yeah, I'm very stoked, I must say.
And that comes through wonderfully clear. I love seeing people so happy in the wine industry, and perfectly understandable as to why. You mentioned the two best in class. The other was the best pinotage. Tell us a little bit about it, in particular the name.
Yeah, the Widowmaker's got a very macabre name. But yeah, look, I tell you what, this has been a very special wine to make in my 15 years now here at Moreson. We've produced Pinotage from that particular vineyard, which is located in Stellenbosch now for about 23 years, of which I said I've been involved with about 15 of those vintages. And and we've always maintained with that particular wine that the wine would never exceed the volume of the vineyard. And sadly, in 2020, they pulled the vineyard out. So it's a legacy project, unfortunately, that was removed. But we were lucky enough to acquire some cuttings from the vineyard in hard lockdown in March last year. We got them propagated by a nursery who was willing to actually take us on because the cuttings were still a bit green. And we actually planted 600 vines here on Moreson this year to hopefully continue the project. But essentially, it's a legacy project that we inherited. And it's just it was a fantastic block of vineyards to make because it literally required, I don't want to say it required no work because obviously there's still work involved with viticulture and winemaking. But in essence, it was one of those wines where all you had to do was show up on the day, make sure you didn't bugger it up, and you got a result. I think Christian can also bear testament to some of the previous vintages that we made. I think we had a cover on the old wine magazine for our 2008 vintage. So it's got a long history and a pedigree of great wine. It's just, like I said, it's just a matter of showing up on the day, make sure that you get all your ducks in a row, and then you've got a great wine.
Two questions for you then, Christian, coming out of a very, very, very happy Moreson winemaker. The first of which is why this Pinotage is so good in your books, and then also where we sit in Pinotage at the moment in South Africa, where the range of style is probably as broad as it is in any varietal we have in South Africa. On one hand, I think it's great that we've got that varietal, but on the other hand, it asks questions of the direction of where Pinotage is going and what should or can constitute a great South African Pinotage. So elaborate on those for me, if you will.
Dan, I think what makes Widowmaker special is exactly what Clayton said, that it was this very particular vineyard that has always produced something rather striking. And I think if I had to sum up Widowmaker, it's not exactly the lightest Pinotage out there, but it's got a density of fruit as well as a essential savoriness, if that makes sense. I think there's a unfortunate legacy of chocolate Pinotage, coffee Pinotage, which whilst it was hugely commercially successful, didn't make for very serious wine, unfortunately. And Moreson, the Widowmaker, manages to have heft, but also balance and complexity. So I must say, I only found out fairly recently that the vineyard had been grabbed up, which is immensely sad. But these things happen. As for Pinotage as a category in general, I'm quite excited. In fact, I'm very excited that the sort of stylistic logjam that sort of prevailed, up until fairly recently, seems to have been broken. And there are benchmark old school Pinotages as made by the likes of Canoncorp, and long may they last. But I think what we're seeing is the stylistics that the new wave have introduced, that they were a bit slow to reach the Pinotage category, are now coming into play. So you're seeing earlier picks, you're seeing carbonic maceration, you're seeing much less use of oak, and I can only be good for the category. I think the point is there isn't only one interpretation of Pinotage that's valid. There are lots of different legitimate versions of the grape, and just as there are different drinking occasions. So in the depths of winter, with the rain belting down, you don't necessarily want a low alcohol carbonic maceration Pinotage. But similarly, when the mercury starts touching 35 degrees Celsius and you're putting some meat on the fire, then you probably don't want 15% pinotage either. So I think there's a sort of healthy, excuse the pun, it's in a state of ferment for which can only be good.
I think that's an excellent summary of where we stand with pinotage. And indeed, there are many different occasions and events for drinking wine. Breakfast, I think, one that is often neglected. And by way of two rather good breakfast wines, let's go back to our Winery of the Year. I suspect you haven't tired of hearing that yet, Andre. And two of the individual awards you got, and two of them that refer to a comment Margie made a little earlier on in the show. So interesting hearing how the awards are calculated. Great to see the large number of categories for greater exposure of so many wineries and by extension, so many different types of wine, because there are two categories here, the wooded Sauvignon Blanc and the niche white, two wines that definitely don't sit amongst the mainstream in terms of what's drunk commercially in South Africa, but two excellent wines. Tell us a little bit about these two and why they're an important part of the Vergelegen offering.
Let's start with Semillon, which is one of my favorite grapes, and I unfortunately not so much a favorite with consumers. It's a bit like the Sauvignon, which is if you give it a female form, it's a well-endowed lady. Guys can't keep their eyes off her. It's up front, it's in your face. You can't miss it. Semillon is more of an intellectual. You need to get to know it, take it out, and then you realize it's not just about upfront fruit. There's a complexity, there's a intensity. It's someone that you want to take to the movies. So it's for the guy that likes a more intellectual kind of lady. That's a Semillon wine. And if you want the upfront fruit, obviously the unwooded Sauvignon, and there's nothing wrong with that. We cater for everyone's taste, and we try to make it still in a classical style, so that it's not too tarty. It's classical grapes, classical wines.
And wines that Christian and his panel have thoroughly enjoyed. When you win an award like this, it gets the world sit up and take notice, but it also puts just a tiny little bit of pressure on as well. Craig, if you look at where you are now, how much of a statement is this for you as a winery, for you as a winemaker? And then does it kind of shift the goalposts a bit? Does it raise expectations, not just that people have of you, but perhaps you have of yourself in terms of vintages to come?
No, I think definitely. If I look back at, last year we scored the best in class for our Cape White blend, and then this year best in class for our Chenin. So definitely the bar has definitely been set in terms of being able to sustain the quality and sustain Cavalli's legacy going forward. Naturally I am somebody who puts a lot of pressure on myself, so I've got that challenge ahead of me as well. I think it's an exciting future for both Cavalli and myself. I'm looking forward to the challenge ahead.
What about for you, Alastair, in terms of your challenge? Because yours is ever so slightly different. This is a 2017 wine, which has won the award at that stage. You were still at Kleine Zelza. So there is now a best-in-class red wine that has been made by your predecessor. That is it's not a small bar for you to reach up to.
Yeah, Dan, it is obviously a challenge. It's always tough filling big shoes, but it's exciting. I am fortunate enough that I am good mates with the winemaker of this wine, Carl van Merwe. He and I met each other first week at university and have been friends ever since. So, that's many years of friendship and tasting wines together. So I have an insight into obviously what he was doing over his tenure at the Morgenzon, and it's an exciting platform to build on because as good as these wines, I don't want to sound arrogant, but as good as the wines are, Carl will be the first to admit, there's still an evolution and a journey to go on to really unlock the full potential. The Morgenzon and its modern guise has been going since 2003. When Wendy first bought the property, and so there's a long journey ahead, many vintages and decades to really truly unlock the terroir. And I think most winemakers and viticulturists are effectively custodians for the next generation, and what we build on, the next generation will build on. And this could be true of any great wine in the world. And this is an exciting starting point. If this is where we're kicking off from, and up is the direction. Watch the space.
And we watch it through an assortment of lenses: the success of wine, the amount it's drunk, the amount flying off shelves and off restaurant wine lists, but also the awards like this that you receive. What sort of validation does this offer? How much stock do you put in this particular award?
Yeah, I mean, like all things, you've got to take them from where they're from. Again, the winemaker panel definitely, I think, understands wine as well as any panel, and again, it's vindication that we're on the right direction, because a lot of times wines like these that are a little bit more structured, a little bit more understated, and are really needing to start opening up, are overlooked in judging panels, and the fact that they take the time to really delve deep into each wine really says it's a true reflection of what the wine's capable of. And this particular one is an awkward wine for some people to understand, especially some of the general consuming public that just is looking for something that's immediately accessible and immediately pleasing. This wine, while immediately pleasing, it has a few more layers to unwrap, and it's a great vindication of our dedication to this style of wine.
Let's look at the journey going forward for one of our other winners. 2 great wins for you, Clayton, with Moreson. Well, what's the future looking like? What is exciting you about where you are now and what's on your horizon?
Yeah, so I mean, I think COVID, like many other industries and many other people, I think affected a lot of, it obviously affected a lot of businesses. And I think we were lucky enough during that time to not necessarily reinvent ourselves, but to almost, leapfrog our journey and where we wanted to be in the next 5 to 10 years. And I think where we're heading to, is a journey that is more Kapla-Seek filled. We're going to continue to still make still wine Chardonnays, but with our red wine production, that future is uncertain. So I think what a lot of people don't know about Moreson or Mosmoli is that, I mean, we're about 98% sparkling wine production, and we've kind of always have been, but we've always kind of had these still wines that have been, that have, they've taken up a lot of our portfolio. So for us, I think that journey into the future will definitely be Kapla-Seek and sparkling wine focused. And we're pretty excited for it because we geared up for it in the sense of what we grow, and I think what Franschhoek has to offer as well.
You're offering some great wine, as we see here. And I think I've got a couple of older bottles of your Chardonnay sitting in my cellar at home, so there might have to be one of those popping up during the course of this week. Andre, as our winery of the year, it's a big title. It's one that you're delighted with, as we can see. What's the future now looking like for Vergelegen?
Obviously excited. We've got some great vintages that still has to come out, 17 and 18, not yet released in terms of red wine. We're pretty much an all-rounder in rugby terms, maybe like a Frans Steyn. We know what he's capable of, and I think the same applies to Vergelegen. It's a classy property with great vineyards that are coming into their own now. They're the right age, 18, 20 years old, 100% virus-free, a wonderful climate, perfect terroir almost, a new MD that's got a different vision. It's going to be exciting, and even for my successors one day, I've been here nearly a quarter of a century. It's a very long time. So they're going to benefit from what we've done here, and that's what winemaking and vine growing is all about. It's to leave a property in a better condition than what you found it in. And this is definitely the case here. Will they find a suitable replacement for me? Definitely. Well, it's like, I think for rugby, it's going to be a bit more difficult to find a suitable replacement for Frans Steyn. And I think it's so sad that we haven't seen him for so many years. Kind of almost the same situation with Vergelegen. We haven't entered. And I want to rectify that, show the world what is going on here, what's happening. And so it's pretty exciting for me. It's great. It's great. I'm in a fantastic position.
The Frans Steyn of South African winemaking. I think that's a fabulous, fabulous comparison and a legacy, already a great legacy without doubt, Andre, but just reinforced ever so slightly by the events of Friday. It's a slightly shorter show this evening. There is a large crowd of golfers waiting for me to go and join them on stage, which I'll be doing shortly. But before we do let you go and wrap up, just back to you, Christian, with two final ones. Let us know who other than you, as the guiding light, was responsible for putting together these various reports and effectively judging all of the wine that we've been talking about today, as well as everything else that made it into your top 20. And then what's next for this? What can we expect for 2022?
Dan, so the reports date all the way back to 2010. And I initially started out working with James Peterson and Roland Peens. And they despite being white and male, I went with them because I thought they were the best tasters around. And I thought that was really important. So they've served for a very, very long time as the two other members of the three-person panel. But as of this year, I'm happy to say we introduced quite a few new younger tasters, and not all white men. So hopefully we're ticking the transformation box as well. And I'm happy to say that they have emerged as very talented, very competent tasters in their own right. So I think we're very well positioned in that regard. I don't want to make too much of the transformation issue, but competent tasting is a hard-won skill. It takes time to hone your palate, and so the individuals that I'm talking about, which viewers can check out online on the site, have been associates with us. They've put in the hours. They've sat with me and James and Roland over the years. So I think we're looking good from a personnel point of view. As for what 2022 holds, it's thanks to COVID, thanks to publishing in the 21st century, there are a few uncertainties. We greatly appreciate some more corporate sponsorship. If anybody's out there who's got deep pockets and is really into wine, they can certainly contact us to discuss collaborations. But yeah, more of the same. I mean, it's just such a pleasure and such a privilege to get to commentate on South African fine wine, because the quality seems to be on a eternal improvement curve, and there's great people making great products. So it's I guess in a nutshell, 2022 hopefully just involves more of the same.
And we look forward to having it. And I must thank you, Christian and Jax, who not only helped us put the show together this evening, but also works tirelessly with you in keeping Wine Magazine going. It is such an essential resource for us South African wine industry. And I know how much time and passion you both put into it. So thank you, not just for the report and for joining us today, but also for everything you do for the South African wine industry, which is also propped up by people who drink vast amounts of wine. Speaking of which, Daryl Balfour joins us. Good evening, Dan and Christian, watching with a really delicious KWB Mentor Sauvignon Blanc from 2012 in my glass, still so fresh and delightful. Cheers, ching ching, as Elle does do a white wine that keeps splendidly like a few others. Daryl, good to have you watching. Guys, thank you all very much. Congratulations on the awards, on the recognition. It's all richly deserved. Christian and his team have put in a lot of hard work, but then that's exactly what you guys have done to give us more great South African wine and reinforce just what a terrific space we find ourselves in terms of South African wine quality right across the board. So Craig and Clayton, Andre, Alastair, thank you all very much indeed. I'll be trying to get through some of each of those wines in the next week or two, just to make sure that Christian's done his job properly and ensure that I can concur and enjoy them as a result. Enjoy the rest of the evening. Thank you so much for being with us, and look forward to having you all back on the show again soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Cheers.
There we go. Special guest there, and what a collection. Great results there for Moreson, with not just the best bubbles in a very competitive space, but also the best pinotage, best overall white from Cavalli there with their filly. It's a terrific Chenin Blanc, 96 points it got from Christian. He doesn't give points out lightly. The Winery of the Year, Vergelegen, as well as a couple of awards in the white category. And Alastair Rimmer, not just Chardonnay and Chenin at De Morgenzon, also a rather nice red. So thank you to all four of the guys. Thank you too to Christian Eedes, the editor of winemag.co.za. It is a terrific space, and one which, if you can, is well worth supporting. I have some prizes to give out, some auction items to sell, and a charity in the form of the Laureate Sport for Good Foundation to support. So I am off to do that. I will see you again on Thursday. I look forward to it. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Goodbye. To join the Pick and Pay Wine Club, simply SMS your smart shopper number to 36775. It's absolutely free, and you'll get for yourself 3 times the smart shopper points on every bottle of wine bought. You'll also get a 20% discount on 10 different wines each month, a 25% discount on a case of wine, and a Magnum, some terrific competitions and invitations to awesome events.